February 1943. Stalag 354. North Africa. The captured German Army cook Oberfeldwebel Karl Muller watched in shock as American soldiers unloaded big piles of flour sugar coffee and meat from Green Army trucks after 14 months feeding the Afrika Korps on shrinking rations. The 37-year-old baker from Munich could not believe the easy plenty. He saw the Americans were bringing in more food in one day than his kitchen had gotten in a whole month across Allied prison camps in North Africa that winter. 1,283 German Army cooks and bakers felt the same confusion these men trained in the strict food rules of the Wehrmacht now faced a food system that went against everything Nazi propaganda had told them about American waste and chaos. They saw an army that fed its lowest private, the same as its top general, where having too much food was better than not enough, and where soon the line between feeding prisoners and feeding guards would almost vanish. "You'll be cooking again by next week," the American lieutenant told Muller through an interpreter. This simple line went against everything the German had been told to expect in prison. Nazi lessons had warned him to expect hunger, hard labor, and punishment. Not kitchen work instead. Just 3 days after surrender, he was being asked about his cooking skills and favorite dishes. Army records show that by March 1943, the U.S. Army had found and registered 83% of captured German food workers. Each one was carefully questioned about training and experience. The Americans were not just gathering information. They were holding job interviews. The Wehrmacht's detailed service records made it easy for American camp officers to spot trained cooks among the prisoners. The first steps for these captured cooks were medical checks, delousing, and, to their surprise, full hot meals. Staff Sergeant James Dennis, a mess officer in the 1st Infantry Division, wrote in his field notes, "The German cooks watched our serving lines with wide eyes. They kept asking if this was special treatment, and we had to tell them again and again, 'This is just the normal ration,'" Staff Sergeant James Dennis wrote in his notes. Karl Muller and 24 other German cooks were first treated as guests, not workers. They sat and watched as American mess soldiers served meals with about 3,400 calories a day, almost twice what German soldiers had gotten. In their last months in Africa, the German cooks wrote letters later censored but saved in records. They talked about fresh eggs, real sugar in coffee, and soft white bread instead of the rough, dark loaves from home. What started as curiosity soon became their first real lesson in American food power. The camp had 5 big 10-burner stoves, 3 giant water heaters, 2 dough mixers, and working refrigerators. Even in the North African heat, this was more equipment than a whole German division would ever have just for one American regiment on the 8th day of capture. First Lieutenant Paul Hendricks, a mess officer from Nebraska, gathered the German cooks and told them through interpreters that they would help in the camp kitchen. Not as slaves, but as real cooks. The Germans could hardly believe it in the Wehrmacht. Prisoners and guards never shared food, but the Americans wanted German cooks to make meals for everyone, prisoners and guards. Together, this new system of using captured enemy cooks in American kitchens soon became one of the strangest and most successful education efforts of the war. The lesson of fair food sharing was shown in every pot of stew and every slice of bread. It taught that in the American Army, feeding people equally was not weakness but part of democracy. The kitchen became a place where German cooks faced American ideas through the simple act of sharing a meal. April 1943, Camp Blanding, Florida. The shiny metal kitchen sparkled under the bright lights as Feldwebel Schmidt stared at a huge dough mixer that could handle 200 pounds of flour at once. In the German Army kitchens, he had always mixed dough by hand, his arms grown strong from years of kneading. Now he watched an American machine do the same work in just a few minutes that spring. 857 German cooks were placed in American camp kitchens, where they saw food systems far beyond anything they had known before. The Camp Blanding kitchen, one of 155 big prison camps across the country, had walk-in coolers that stayed at 38 degrees ovens that baked 400 loaves at a time, steam pots that held 80 gallons of soup, and dishwashers that cleaned 8,000 plates every hour. And these machines were not for officers. Only they were used in normal mess halls that fed thousands of soldiers 3 times a day. Learning to use this equipment became a kind of education. Army records show that German cooks got formal lessons on how to use and fix the machines and keep them clean. Camp Blanding logs from May 1943 show they had to take 42 hours of training before they could start real work. They were learning with tools more advanced than most. Hotels in Germany had ever seen the food supplies amazed them. Schmidt wrote in a censored letter every Monday, "The kitchen got 6,000 pounds of white flour, 2,000 pounds of sugar, 800 pounds of butter, and crates of eggs in." Germany butter had disappeared from army kitchens by 1941. Here people complained. If it came one day late, the food for one prison camp each week was more than a full German regiment got in a month. The way American kitchens were run shocked the Germans too, and their army food was based on rank officers, got rich meals, and the regular soldiers got less. American mess halls worked on a rule that everyone got the same food. No matter their rank. Army records show that generals and privates all got at least 3,400 calories a day, and men doing heavy work got up to 3,800. Even the German prisoners got the same food and the same 3,400 calories as the American guards. Medical checks from Camp Blanding showed each prisoner gained about 12 pounds in the first 2 months, proof that they were eating better than they ever did at the front. The equal way food was shared went against everything the German cooks had learned in their own army, but soon both sides started learning from each other. The German bakers showed the Americans how to make real rye bread, and the Americans showed them how to make food fast for big groups. The kitchen logs said the German bakers made the bread taste better while they learned new ways to bake in large numbers. No one had expected this kind of teamwork. Camp Blanding's main bakery made 11,000 loaves of bread every day, using 6 German master bakers. The big coffee machines brewed 500 gallons every morning, and the meat shop handled over 3,000 pounds. Daily Army records showed this was far more than German Army kitchens could ever make. By summer 1943, the Germans were no longer just helpers. They were planning meals with the Americans. The big change came when Captain Thomas Williams, the mess officer, asked Schmidt to make some German dishes for everyone. He told him, "We noticed your men don't always finish their food. What would they like instead?" Schmidt was surprised, but even more so when the captain added, "Whatever you make, cook enough for everyone, guards too, feeding both sides." The same way was a second big shock to the Germans. The German cooks, who had learned to keep strict food rules for different ranks, were now told to do the opposite, using their own cooking skills. July 1943. Camp Forest, Tennessee. Oberfeldwebel Hans Bruckner was confused when the American mess sergeant told him to serve the same beef goulash to both prisoners and guards. In the German army, officers got the meat, and the soldiers only got thin vegetable soup. But here, everyone got the same 4-ounce portion of beef, and could even have seconds if they were still hungry. The line between guard and prisoner faded even more when both sat side by side at the same tables, eating the same food cooked by German hands. Across many American prison camps that summer, over 700 German cooks saw a system that erased military rank through food camp records showed. The same meals were served to American officers, guards, and German prisoners, all getting 3,400 calories a day, no matter their rank or nationality. This went against everything they had been taught in the German army, where better food always showed higher status. What shocked them most was how the Americans threw away leftover food. Camp Forest kitchen logs said they tossed about 300 pounds of cooked food every day. Hans Bruckner at first refused, since he had spent years trying to stretch small supplies on the Russian front. His American boss said health rules banned saving leftovers. But to Bruckner, it looked like terrible waste. The endless supply of food showed American strength better than any poster or speech could he wrote in his journal. I was trained to feed officers first, then sergeants, then the rest with whatever was left. Here I must give everyone the same. If a general and a private come at the same time, both get equal portions. This simple, daily act of sharing food taught more than any class could. Camp logs from August 1943 recorded the first German cooking day when the prisoners made their own dishes for everyone at Camp Forest. American guards lined up to eat Sauerbraten schnitzel and rouladen made by the very men they once fought. The event worked even better than expected, and American soldiers soon began asking for some German dishes to be added to their regular menus. Military records show that by October 1943, about 86% of prison camps had at least one German food on their meal list. Red Cross health checks that fall showed big improvements in prisoner health. On average, each German gained about 17 pounds after 6 months in American camps. Blood tests proved their nutrition was far better than when they were captured. This change came from diets that had daily meat, milk, fresh vegetables, and fruit, things that German soldiers had not seen in years. The food exchange grew faster when prisoners started writing down recipes. Camp Forest's kitchen logs showed German cooks making detailed notes on how to cook American foods like cornbread grits and hash browns, while American cooks wrote down German ways of baking rye bread and preserving meat. This sharing happened naturally through working side by side, not through formal lessons. Hans Bruckner's story showed this transformation clearly. At first he refused to use American methods, but over time he began mixing them with his own to make things better. By September 1943, the Camp Forest mess officer put Bruckner in charge of the bakery where he managed both German and American workers. This shift from prisoner to manager happened simply because it worked better, not because of any official rule. Over time, this pattern appeared in many other camps. American oversight slowly changed into shared management as trust grew. Kitchen charts from late 1943 showed German cooks running main operations in about 73% of the large camps, while Americans mainly handled coordination. The real turning point came in November 1943, when an army inspection showed that kitchens led by German teams met or even beat official food and safety standards. Instead of taking back control, the Americans officially kept this cooperative system. Camp Forest's mess hall, which served 3 meals a day for 3,000 people under mostly German management, earned the top efficiency rating from inspectors. This proved what daily work had already shown, that cooperation between former enemies worked better than command and control. October 1943. Oklahoma wheat fields near Camp Alva Halfeldwebel. Franz Weiss stood speechless as he watched a giant combine harvester slice through a 24-foot path of golden wheat, cutting more grain in one sweep than his whole Bavarian farm could grow in a season. The German baker, now part of a supervised farm work group, helping American agriculture, saw machines so efficient that people seemed almost unnecessary. One farmer using one machine could harvest 200 acres a day, equal to the work of 200 men using the old methods. This direct exposure to American food production gave German cooks a full education in industrial farming power. Department of Agriculture records show that by late 1943, about 2,743 German prisoners with food or farming backgrounds worked in these programs. They saw every step of how food moved from the field to the table, learning what made America's huge food supply possible. The numbers were hard to argue with. American wheat farms averaged 17 bushels per acre, while Germany produced only 12. One dairy farm in Wisconsin sent 1,500 gallons of milk every day to Camp McCoy, more than some German villages made in a whole week. These facts, seen firsthand, not from propaganda, destroyed old beliefs that America was weak in production. The most shocking visits were to food factories. At the Heinz plant near Pittsburgh, German cooks saw lines of machines turn 4 150 tons of tomatoes a day into ketchup and sauce. At the Continental Baking Company in Indianapolis, they saw 240,000 loaves of bread made daily. These amounts were bigger than Germany's whole army supply output. Franzu. Weiss later wrote, "Their scale made our best shops look like tiny workshops. Their smallest plants made more than our biggest." The science behind American military food also stunned them. German soldiers had been given barely enough to survive, about 2,400 calories a day by 1943, but the American standard gave 3,400 calories, with 100 grams of protein, vitamins, and balanced food groups. These were not just ideas, but actual daily practice seen by the German cooks. Symbolic foods carried special emotional power. Eggs requiring showed clear proof of better health and steady recovery. The German prisoners were eating like they never had before, and it showed eggs, which took lots of grain to produce, appeared every day on American breakfast trays. About 4.2 million were served each week, just in the prison camps. Fresh oranges and other citrus fruits from Florida and California arrived every week, even with wartime travel problems. These foods, that were rare or gone in Germany, were normal here, showing a level of plenty the Germans couldn't imagine. The shared kitchens led to surprising new meals. Camp logs from winter, 1943 to 1944, listed mixed German and American dishes. German style. Potato salad made with lots of American mayonnaise sausages with new spices, and apple strudel changed so it could be baked for thousands. Camp Alva's reports said 15 new recipes from this mix later became part of regular Army meal plans. By the end of 1943, German cooks were asking for permission to write down American cooking methods for use after the war. They began to understand that what they saw wasn't just temporary wartime power, but a better way to run kitchens. Franz Weiss and others started noting down machine types, work systems, and ideas that went against everything they had learned before. In January 1944 at Camp Shelby, Mississippi, Unreitzia Max Hoffman folded a letter to his wife in Munich, trying to tell her what he saw without getting his note censored. "The bread here has eggs and milk," he wrote, knowing she would realize how amazing that was in starving Germany. "Yesterday I made 200 liters of chocolate pudding with real cocoa." These simple cooking details, shared in thousands of letters from German cooks to their families, quietly tore down Nazi lies about hungry, weak Americans more strongly than any Allied radio could. The health results proved it. 2 medical records from Camp Shelby showed German prisoners gained an average of 22 pounds after 9 months, and their quarterly exams. Almost all German cooks had become fully part of the camp kitchens. They were no longer seen only as prisoners but as real chefs working side by side with Americans. Medical reports showed clear proof of this steady change. By mid-1944, 97% of prisoners had better muscle strength, no more vitamin problems, and normal blood results. These health gains didn't come from any special favor. They came from regular American Army meals, showing that what Germans called luxury food, Americans saw as just normal needs. Easter 1944 brought another big moment. Camp leaders asked the German cooks to make their own traditional Easter dinner. Kitchen notes said they used 400 pounds of ham, 150 dozen eggs, 300 pounds of potatoes, and 75 pounds of butter to make a full German feast for 2,000 prisoners. In Germany, those items were rare or totally gone, but here they were given out easily, showing plenty that could not be denied. German cooks also met local Mississippi farmers who often brought fresh food right to the camp. Strawberry farmers brought 200 pounds daily during harvest. Chicken farmers sent 500 chickens each week, and dairies delivered 300 gallons of fresh cream every month. These visits helped the Germans see the human side of America and its huge farming power. The International Red Cross saw this too. A March 1944 report praised how well the prisoner cooks were being included, saying it lifted spirits and gave them food even better. than basic rules required. It also said that German cooks had real responsibility in over 80% of the camps. By June 1944, Camp Shelby held a big cooking contest that showed how far things had come German, and American teams used the same food supplies to see who could make the best dishes they created. 37 meals using normal Army rations and local restaurant. Owners and officers judged them, the German cooks. Later said this contest was the moment real respect began, when former enemies became co-workers and even friends. By fall 1944, German culinary specialists had started asking permission to carefully record American cooking methods. Max Hoffman and 5 other trained chefs at Camp Shelby were officially authorized to create a complete manual of American institutional cooking, covering equipment details, organizational systems, and mass production techniques. This 212-page document, now preserved in military archives, shows a full change in mindset. The former Nazi soldiers recorded American methods not as enemy practices, but as professional skills they hoped to use in post-war Germany. The final proof of this mental transformation came from private interviews with Army intelligence officers. Transcripts show German culinary specialists consistently describing American abundance not as propaganda, but as organized industrial achievement. One senior German chef said, "I've been cooking professionally for 22 years. What I've seen here isn't just new equipment. It's a completely different way of thinking about feeding people." In April 1946, at the Port of New York, Karl Muller held tightly his carefully kept notebook with 142 American recipes, equipment details, and organizational plans as he boarded the ship back to Germany. The former Wehrmacht baker was not alone. Military records confirm that 87% of German culinary specialists left American captivity with documented American techniques. Some had simple recipe cards, while others, like Muller, compiled full professional references. American authorities, seeing the benefits for Reconstruction, allowed these culinary records even when most technical materials were restricted. Across post-war Germany from 1947 to 1955, restaurants run by former P cooks systematically applied American institutional cooking methods in civilian kitchens. The American Schnell restaurant, a fast-service restaurant opened in Munich by former Camp Blanding baker Werner Schmidt in 1949, featured open kitchens, efficient preparation methods, and standardized portion sizes previously unseen in German dining. Business records show the restaurant serving 3,400 meals daily by 1952, a scale impossible without American mass production techniques. The impact is visible in economic records from West Germany's post-war Wirtschaftswunder period. By 1955, restaurants opened by former PWs employed about 27,000 workers, generated 312 million Deutsche Marks annually, and trained roughly 7,400 apprentices in hybrid German-American culinary methods. These figures show not only business success, but also the systematic transfer of knowledge from prison camp kitchens to the civilian economy. Specific American techniques permanently transformed German commercial food preparation. Standardized recipe systems with precise measurements replaced traditional approximations. Industrial kitchen organization, including station-based preparation, parallel processing, and assembly line service, doubled production capacity in these establishments. Health standards learned in P camps often exceeded existing German regulations, with former prisoners implementing American sanitation practices before official requirements. Transatlantic professional connections formed during captivity continued for decades. Business correspondence preserved in company archives shows many German restaurant owners keeping in touch with their former American supervisors. Max Hoffman, the former Camp Shelby cook, exchanged 137 letters with Mississippi restaurants between 1947 and 1965, documenting continuous professional collaboration. These connections aided equipment purchases, ingredient sourcing, and even staff exchanges. The historical impact of this culinary transfer goes beyond restaurants. Former P cooks who entered institutional feeding, hospitals, schools, corporate cafeterias, applied systematic American approaches that dramatically increased efficiency. Health Ministry records from 1958 show hospitals with former P kitchen directors serving meals at 47% lower cost while maintaining higher nutritional standards than traditional operations. Modern evidence of this transformation is still visible in contemporary German food service. The Mensa University cafeteria system, restructured in the 1950s, clearly reflects American institutional design influences. Self-service models, standardized portions, and efficient serving systems trace directly to P-camp experiences. Restaurant equipment produced in post-war Germany increasingly followed American specifications, documented by returning prisoners. The story comes full circle with Karl Muller, who opened Amerikanische Bäckerei, an American-style bakery in Munich in 1948. His shop introduced continuous process bread production learned at Camp Crossville, producing 1,200 loaves daily with just 3 employees, an unprecedented efficiency in post-war Germany. Muller later reflected, "I arrived in America, a Nazi soldier convinced of German superiority. I returned knowing true strength lies in abundance shared by all. The Americans didn't just teach me to bake differently. They showed me a world that could be different and possible."